Evening all, how are we all doing? Thank you, Zylock, appreciate it. Although you can't hear me because you're muted, but thank you anyway. So we have an interesting stream tonight. I've been working super hard over the past couple of days to iron out as many of the bugs as I can with the galactic flight system, the galaxy system, and multiplayer, and getting all of that working smoothly together. And I basically got to the point where I had to rejig some of the systems so we had a more concrete version of ground truth as to where the ship was and what it was doing, which is now done. And I'm currently testing that now with Claire. So I shall quickly hop over to the other screen, like so. And I'm just going through at the moment and making sure that everything works. So I can control the ship, I can go up and down, left and right. Before we had a copy of the physical ship that's flying around on both the server and the client, and we were basically handing off a lot of it to the client, so it wasn't as server authoritative as it should be. And so all of the movement you see is now being driven completely by the server. It is a little bit laggy, if I'm honest. There's a little bit of glitchiness there. But we're now looking at ground truth, so I just need to optimize this out a little bit. Oh, look, at Claire has appeared. Yeah, so we don't have any like movement prediction or anything like that happening right now. So it's literally capturing the rotation of the ship, the speed of the ship, and just replicating that over the network as is, which is why it's a little bit glitchy. But it's silky smooth for the host. It's just clients that are having like a second-hand view a little bit. But one of the other things that all this seems to have improved upon is the glitchiness of the planetary surfaces. So if I fly over here a little bit. Yeah, true that. So one of the issues we were having was kind of floating point errors on planetary surfaces, and that was causing the texture to glitch around quite a lot. And it's still doing it a little bit, but not as bad as it was before. I think it's preferring just reading the coordinates from a replicated variable rather than trying to work it out for itself. One of the issues we have with networking, which I didn't realise until yesterday, is that the 64-bit world coordinates don't get replicated as 64-bit. They get trimmed down to 32-bit floats. So as much as you're computing 64-bit coordinates on the engine, that's not what's being replicated, apparently, which accounts for some of the issues we're seeing. But everything seems to be smooth there, so that is good. Right, sensors, make sure they're all working. So we're in the right place there, we're in the right place there. Thank you, Lady Wolf. So one of the bugs I'm still yet to fix is when the client clicks one of the stars in the list, there is a noticeable delay before that click is actioned. It happens immediately on the server, so the server sees me clicking immediately, but there's a delay on the client. So I will be fixing that during this stream. I think everything else has been updated. All seems to be where it should be. Ship's in the right place there. It's in the right place there. Let's just stick it on full speed a minute. So there's been lots of little things which were causing niggles, because it's just a case of we didn't have a single source of ground truth. Like the holo display, for example, was getting its ship coordinates from the sensors rather than like a single, this is where the ship is, location variable. So the way it works now is the ship is basically saving its state on the game state file. For anyone who's not an Unreal Engine dev, basically the game state is like a server authoritative state file for the server. So what we're doing is we're storing like that ground truth of the ship's coordinates on the game state, which is by its very nature replicated across the network, and then all the different various game systems then speak to the single source of ground truth to get the coordinates for the ship. So rather than passing the coordinates around from system to system, they're all now getting it from the central single location, which means things like the ship coordinates should be the same across the board every single time. Although we do seem to be flying sideways. That's interesting. Let me just actually target something specifically. So let's go there. So we're seeing the right target, we're seeing the right distance, and okay, and now it is flying the right way. I think the map was going the right way, it just hadn't rotated the ship icon, which also needs changing actually, that's the old one. See whether or not this updates as we arrive. So that's another bug which I thought we'd fixed actually. So if you have the medium range sensors selected and you traverse between one single light year cube to the next, it seems to be flicking itself over to long range on its own. So that's another thing we need to tweak. So what we're doing at the moment is we are trying to spot and fix every single bug we can. As much as we can. And to that end, the goal this evening is to put out a public test build. So we were really wanting to update the public demo today and announce that live on stream, but we just keep coming up with new bugs and we keep finding new issues. So instead of putting it out fully to the public, we're going to make a beta branch on the public demo. So it'll be fully available to anyone that wants to go and play it, but it's obviously not going to be advertised and pushed. So if you're on Discord and if you're watching the stream, you'll be able to access that by going into the betas tab. So what we'll do for tonight's stream is we will polish and polish as much as we can, and then towards the end of the stream we will make that live. And then everyone can go and check it out and help us find some bugs, hopefully. And then once we're satisfied that we have fixed absolutely all of the issues, then we will make it live fully and put out all the advertising and do the big fanfare. Or rather, Claire will. And I'll hide in the background, curled up in a ball crying. The fact the client can't see the little progress bar when doing a survey is another issue that needs fixing, but it's not a simple issue to fix. It requires a bit of a rewrite with how we're handling the input for that. It all still works, but they're not seeing the UI update, so I'll probably do that over the next couple of days. No problem, Quiggers-me. Yeah, so updating on here seems to be swift enough. It just seems to be with a long-range list. I think there's just so many objects. There's a lot more than 20. There's like thousands. So when you click any item in this list, it is doing something in the background on the client. I think it's going through all like 1600 or so, trying to refresh them all, which is why it's taking ages, and it doesn't do that on the host, so I need to dig into that. Let's just go and make sure we can navigate to a planet a minute. Distance isn't updating on the client, so that's something else that needs fixing. It's all these little things that just need sorting out. It does have a spinning chair, so you can spin the chair around. You're right, it is a bit weird. It's the only station on the bridge that does face forwards with their back to everybody. But yeah, they do have a swivel chair, so they can just spin around and speak to whoever's speaking to them. Like Claire over there, diligently working away. Yeah, it's actually updating differently now. So previously, all of the holo display, the updates were driven by updates that were happening on the sensors, and now that we have that ground truth for a lot of the ship data, it's now querying that directly, and it's querying that at 30 times a second. So the movement as the holo display is updating is a lot smoother, and it should be updating these pretty much in real time as well. I've noticed that if we're going to another star, they do update, but they only update every 1 light year. So there's a few things there that just need tweaking. Yeah, the mics are almost up to full. Yeah, let me update that. It's about as loud as I can make it, I'm afraid. The audio volume on the music is on literally 2 pixels. Will that go any higher? No, that's literally on full volume. Right then. What to fix first? That's the question. Claire, whilst you've got that internal test build running, could you please have just a poke around and just test everything for me? Just highlight anything which is like seriously broken. Thank you all. Let's see if we can figure out. Oh yes. Oh, I'll tell you what. I'll do that first because I will forget otherwise. Yeah, it's a different music track tonight as well because the usual Lofi Geek live stream that I put on isn't running, so I just picked a random video from their channel. The tutorial system is really clunky, to put it mildly. So in order to update it, I have to first select the tutorial actor itself. I need to then select the actual tutorial I'm working with and select the data table that we're updating. Start that at step 1, and then as we progress through the tutorial it should be moving markers around and such. Where's the after section? Over there. Make sure that those are actually in the right place a minute. Yes, Darren, that is the plan. Yeah, I'm not particularly loud. Now, let me see if I can do something on the PC side of things. Is that any better? We're in the UK, so that's UTC +0. So one of the issues that we had with the tutorial system is that we need to capture that the player has pressed something, and these buttons are all basically instances of the same actor, so they're not unique in the sense that every single one has the same ID associated with it. So in order for us to capture exactly which button has been pressed, we need to manually give every single button on the ship a unique identifier. And we will do that because behind all of this, eventually there'll be console access. So you'll be able to bring up a text-based console and use Cisco-style commands to connect to any device on the ship and issue like open and close commands on breakers and that sort of thing. So they do all need a unique ID associated with them. But obviously that's a bit of a mammoth task just for the tutorial. So the way we're handling it is we're placing a transparent button over the top of the button you have to press, and that's what captures the button click. But that does mean, therefore, that you have to position and scale that little yellow box on every single thing the player has to click. And then we have to manage the location markers as well. I think all of these ones are generally fine. None of this is moved, so that one should all be okay. Same with these ones. These haven't been moved anywhere. Let's just go through the tutorial, skipping it all until we get to the bits that are misaligned. We'll run through this as well and make sure that the actual targets are in the right place. Kind of need some sort of in-world indicator as to where the waypoint is. It's there. Okay, well, some of these can be removed. Because we have a new tool for drawing the waypoints, we don't need intermediary step waypoints like this one anymore. So that one can just be gotten rid of. Just grab the data table in question. Right, so that. Right, that's the target marker. Blurbage, 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 target marker. So here we've got 3 target markers in the world, and I think we only need that one. So if we take the audio from this one and we pop that on this one, then we can get rid of these ones. I'll just make sure the right one? So 440 is there. 450 is there. And then 460 is over here. So it's using the nav mesh to draw the path to these things. So yeah, I can see here it would probably send you round the back to get to that, but that's kind of unavoidable, really. So if we move that over ever so slightly, just so it's above the nav mesh. And then save that step. Right, and on here we can get rid of that one and that one. So now it just sends you straight back to the reactor room without any intermediary steps. Yes, Anasi, they will. I'll go through it in a sec first, and we'll have a look at what it's actually doing. Yes, Talarian, you're correct. Every single button on the ship. Well, not so much every button, every interface. So if you consider like each one of these breakers as being like a physical interface or a physical switch, then that needs a logical ID associated with it, so that if we're connecting to this box remotely, say we dial into this from the bridge, you know, we need to be able to select the right interface to perform an action on, and for that it requires an ID, and that will be the same for everything across the board. It will all need unique identifiers. I used to work on Cisco routers, so that's my comfort zone with all of that. Right, let's see if I can force it to start in the tutorial in a minute. There's no multiplayer game running at the moment. Right, so this should force us into the cold and dark tutorial. Yeah, for sure. There's, I don't know, there's something really cool in a geeky way of connecting to an important box somewhere. Like, I used to work managing maintenance on a global network, and you know, sometimes I'd have to connect to Cisco routers, which were literally core routers on the network, and you know, we'd have a lot of traffic and a lot of big customers going through some of those boxes, and you know, knowing that I could just type shut on an interface and like destroy half the network was terrifying, but cool at the same time, you know, being remotely on one of those boxes. Yeah, they won't be that long.
Welcome to the Magellan-class Cold Start training module. My name is Ava.
That's
I'm
no
the UN
good.
Space Fleet's AI...
Oh no, she is doing it.
Welcome to the Magellan-class Cold Start training module. My name is Ava. I'm the UN Space Fleet's AI voice assistant.
I started it in multiplayer,
In
that's
this
why.
module, we will review the correct procedure for starting up the ship's fusion reactor and
Well,
then
this will be
supplying
interesting.
power to the vessel. The ship is currently in a cold and dark state, so for your safety, I have taken the liberty of turning on your torch for you. To begin, follow the waypoints on your HUD to the lower floor of the reactor room.
Well, that's kind of good actually. So it seems to be working on both the client and the host. Right, I'm going to quit that though a sec because it's going to mess up if we do it in multiplayer in the editor. Yeah, we could dynamically come up with a procedural way of assigning IDs to things, but I guess we're designing the network for it. So you know, it's not just about generating some IDs. We're actually designing the infrastructure as well. So there's like, you know, a network architect kind of job involved. Thank you. Yeah, I love this loading screen. I'm going to try and find ways of making it live rather than
Welcome to the Magellan-class cold start training module. My name is Ava.
Yeah.
In this mod, the ship is...
Yeah.
To begin, follow the waypoints on your HUD to the lower floor of the reactor room. As you can see, the reactor is offline, and none of the ship's systems are powered. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to the startup distributor. As its name suggests, you'll notice that... Let's go ahead and start with the G-deck breaker. And now the F-deck breaker. And finally, the reactor supply itself. Excellent. Now we can see what we're doing. You can go ahead and turn off your torch by pressing T. The reactor controls should now be online, so let's walk back to the reactor room and take a look. This console displays the reactor's vital information and provides you with full control over the reactor and its subsystems. On the left-hand side, we have the coolants. On the right, in the center, as you can see from all of... The first thing we need to do is supply power. Great. Now that the reactor has... The chamber pressure should now be dropping, while we wait for the confinement chamber to reach its target pressure. Exit the reactor room via the door behind you, and follow the waypoints on your HUD to the cryogenic storage room.
Okay, so this particular tutorial step is trying to take us to up
These storage
here.
tanks hold all of the cryogenic fluids that are used to both fuel and cool the reactor.
So if I move
All
it
4 tanks are
down
currently empty,
here,
so our first task is to begin the filling process.
let's make sure we got a nav path there. Yeah, so let's go back to the right step. What step was that? That one. So this was step 180. It's all the way up there, that would be why. Okay, that should be that one fixed. So I'm going to move all of these so that they are just within range, within easy range of a nav mesh. Yeah, the cold and dark will remain as is. I need to go through and re-record all of the audio for that. But I'll wait until we have expanded the process a little bit. This is just like the beginnings of it, really. It will be more involved than this in the future, and at that point I'll re-record it all, because it's quite a lot of recording to do otherwise. Yeah, good question, Don. So it's a fair point. Like, all of the cables right now, as much as they do exist physically and they all do their job, none of them have been like actually routed properly yet. So all of this stuff all needs doing, and the whole reactor model itself needs updating and replacing, and that will then incorporate all the attachment points for all these pipes. I don't need to be exact with this. It will pick a location kind of within range of the nav mesh, so it doesn't have to be exactly on the nav mesh. But I don't want it going up above the nav mesh to the one above either, so I'll just make sure that we're down a bit lower. Right, so we've got some waypoints between here and the battery rooms that we don't need. So we'll go ahead and delete those. Yeah, so we're on step, whatever that is. Still have a broken monitor. I've been in contact with the company I bought the monitors from, and they want me to do a test, like a screen test, which is basically just like lines all over the screen and like color shaded areas, and they want to take photographs of it on my phone, like to demonstrate that it's broken. And I'm like, dude, it's covered in black lines all over the monitor. Like, I know that it's broken. We don't need to do like sensitivity testing and see whether there's dead pixels. Yeah, the tech manual, really, I want it to cover everything. So I want the tech manual to be literally a real document for how you perform any kind of procedure aboard the ship. You know, when it's finished, it's going to be like that thick. It's going to be huge. But yeah, in universe, as detailed as possible. Right, so we take the audio from that and we stick it on there, and then we should be able to just delete these ones. Okay, so the next step is there, which should be in front of the door, ideally. Yeah, me included. so this is another bit of the tutorial where we need to delete some steps because it's sending us round the houses. So that's, so I think 980. Yeah. Right, so again, we'll take the audio from that one, pop it on that one, then we can delete that and that. And that puts the marker there. Right, so this is where we need to line some stuff up. Right, so obviously these are defaulting to the loading screen, so we need to do a bit of jiggery pokery to sort that out so we can see what we're doing. So if we just set that to active widget index 1, that will give us the actual screen, like so. And then we need to reset the UI. Okay. Right, then we just need to move that over the button so that we capture the player input. Make sure that it's nice and snug on there. One of the biggest problems we have with this approach is people that click through it really quickly, because like if you click the edge, either you're gonna click the overlay and progress the tutorial without having clicked the button, or if you make the overlay smaller, you're going to click the button without clicking the overlay. So it is never going to be perfectly lined up all the way around. So there's always going to be edge cases where if someone clicks right on the edge, you're going to hit the highlighter or the button, not both. And that then obviously will cause the tutorial to have a hiccup. This won't be the first time that I've had to move these, and they'll be moved again once these boxes are properly bedded in and actually attached to the wall, like properly, because they're just floating right now. Then of course we'll have to redo this same job again and move the highlighters around. So all these little things that you don't think about, you're just like, oh yeah, I'll just move that box out of the way a minute, and then you realise that, hang on, now I've messed up the tutorial. But that's another reason for why we want to capture the actual button press rather than capturing the mouse click, because if we capture an event from that interface having been opened, then it doesn't matter where the box is. We're not having to like, you know, put highlighters over it. And then we can also cause it to flash on its own without having to put this over it manually. Yeah, hopefully it will be. Right, so this step can be deleted because we've got a halfway marker. So that is 1080. Move the audio, delete the first one. To be honest, I'll do that for the others as well while we're here. So copy the audio, remove the midpoint one, copy the audio, remove the midpoint one. Right, and then this is taking us around the houses, back down to the reactor room. So if we move the audio there, and then we can just delete those 3. All the rest of it's mostly just clicking stuff. Oh yeah, and then taking the player up to the bridge. It'll be interesting to see whether it manages that one, because that's literally pathing all the way through the ship. Okay. And move the button. Oh yeah, I forgot I combined this one, so I tried to speed the process up a little bit by sending the player over, but having the button press be the trigger, not arriving at the location. So I might move that one out of the way a little bit, because it's not going to go anywhere once the player arrives. Just to confirm, this is set to button. Yeah, so the target arrow will stay there even though the player's in that location. I might split that up into 2 separate steps on the data table, but it can stay as is for now. And then that sends us around to the other side. this one's quite a bit different from where it was before. Before we didn't have this alcove. This was just a flat wall across here, but I preferred having an alcove before we had a door to the cargo holds and everything. Like an engineering alcove, which means I had to move everything. So this one's moved in various different directions, so I might as well straighten it up while I'm here. And then that will mean we then need to straighten up the highlighter as well. We want it to stand ever so slightly proud of the button so that we're not losing the mouse click. That should do it. We're going to have a similar issue here, so we'll straighten it up first. Again, eventually these will be like properly mounted on the wall, they're not just going to be floating in midair. Taking us all the way down here. Again, I think we're a bit far away from the nav mesh with the target marker, so if we just move that out above the nav mesh, that should solve that. Again, it doesn't need to be exact, it just needs to be near enough. And I'll move it down a bit so we don't get up there. If anyone ever wants to know what it's like to be a game dev, just show them this video. This is basically game dev. Just tweaking and fiddling with stuff. The nav mesh agent has a radius associated with it. Obviously, this is only a rough idea of the nav mesh; it's not exact. But the width of the nav mesh. So, if you imagine a capsule there, like a pill-shaped collision mesh, then that would be like the center of it. So that the width of the character would be this. So yeah, so it accounts for the fact that the player is obviously like that wide, but at the same time, the nav mesh it draws is like just an approximation. Hey Lurie, all good, thank you. I have been busy sorting out all the bugs and issues ahead of the demo update. I'm trying to get it into as solid a state as possible. So yeah, I've been hard at it. It's one of those things where you think you've fixed everything, and then you do another test, and then you find more things to fix, and you fix those, and then you do another test, and then you realise the things you fixed broke something else, so then you have to do another test. Okay, so there's a point there we can get rid of. Copy the audio from there, move it over there, delete that one. That's basically just coding all over, that is. You touch one thing and something else breaks. So I shall run through this in a sec, and then we can see whether or not our efforts bear any fruit. And then that should take us all the way up here. That's already on the nav mesh, so that one's all right. We'll move that one down a bit because I'm worried it's going to try and stick it on the ceiling there. That one should be alright, but I shall lower it a bit. Give that a whirl. Yeah. You could have an infinite supply of chocolate and it still wouldn't be enough. Thank you, Simon. That will probably cover about a day's worth of chocolate intake.
Welcome to the Magellan-class Cold Start training module. My name is Ava. I'm the UN Space Fleet's AI voice assistant. In this module, we will review the correct procedure for starting up the ship. To begin, follow the waypoints on your HUD to the lower floor of the reactor room.
So this breadcrumb trail, as you can see, has issues. I will be smoothing this off and updating it a little bit. Essentially, right now it's just drawing a path along the nav mesh and then just stretching a spline mesh along it. I need to do that and then redraw it, smoothing off the edges, and then it won't do this craziness at the edges.
As you can see, the reactor is offline. Our first task is to provide power to the engine. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to the startup distributor. As its name suggests, the startup distributor routes energy from the start capacitors. You'll know. Let's go. Start with the G-deck breakers. And now the F. And finally, the reactor. Excellent. Now we can see what we're doing. You can go ahead and turn off your torch by pressing T. The reactor controls should now be online, so let's walk back to the reactor room and take a look. This console display on the left, in the set. As you can see from the first thing we need to do is supply. Great. Now the chamber pressure. While we wait for the confinement chamber to exit the reactor room via the door behind you, and follow the waypoints on your HUD to the cryogenic storage room. These storage tanks hold all of the all 4 tanks. Let's start with the helium coolant. Head behind the storage tanks to access the helium cryocooler. The cryocoolers use a process called Start up the helium cryocooler now by using the indicated. Excellent. These valves control the flow of gases. Go ahead and open the helium supply valve now. If you turn around again and inspect the display screen connected to the helium tank, you should be able to We now need to perform the same sequence of events for the other. Helium-3 is the first of 2 fuel, as before. And now, next we need to start filling the 2 deuterium tanks. So let's head over to the other side of the room. Deuterium, also known as, we store as before, turn on the first, and now the first deuterium refill valve behind you. Next, turn on the second deuterium cryocooler. And now the second deuterium refill valve. Okay, perfect. All 4 storage tanks. For our next task, make your way around to the other side of the tanks and locate the deuterium tank outflow valve. Open the deuterium outflow valve to begin supply. Next, power on the pump itself using the button indicate. Excellent. That's half of the fuel mix taken care of. Now head over to the helium-3 tank outflow valve so we can, as before, and now engage the helium. Perfect. All we have to do now is take care of the coolant flow. Now open the helium outflow valve. And finally, power. There we go. The reactor is... Follow the waypoints back to the reactor room, where we have just a few more valves to open.
Yeah, I thought it would try and force you around the back because this little gap here is a little bit too wide. But that's fine. It shows you where you're going.
To complete the... Now make your way around to the opposite side. First, open the deuterium inflow valve. And now open the helium... Okay, great. Let's head over to the reactor controls and... As you can see, we now have coolant flowing into the reactor. This has begun the process of cooling down the magnetic field coils, which must reach temperatures below 20 Kelvin in order to become superconductive. Once the coils have reached their target temperature, you will be able to engage the magnetic field. Okay, the temperatures look good. With a solid vacuum established, congratulations. You have now successfully, for safety, the reactor. This means high volt. You'll notice that you can increase the power beyond 100%. Okay, with the reactor now powering. Perfect. If we now head around to the opposite side of the reactor output distributor should now be powered up. This device distributes the reactors. The rest of the... Go ahead and connect. Excellent. If you turn to your left, you'll see the 5 high-voltage distributors are now coming online. Head over to the main battery distributor. This device takes the high-voltage reactor feed and go ahead and connect all 8 output. Perfect. The battery arrays should now be charging, but we should perform a visual inspection to make sure. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to port battery room 1. The electrical supply on Magellan for increased redundancy. Should the battery arrays similarly? Okay, let's take a look at one of the individual batteries. On the left-hand side of the... and in the center. If we did everything correctly, all of the cells should now be slowly charging up. For the next step, we now need to connect each of the 8 battery rooms to the ship's electrical grid. This task will take us into the... Follow the waypoints on your HUD to port battery aggregator 1. Each battery room has a corresponding battery. These devices perform load balance. Go ahead and connect the out...
Yeah, once or twice.
1 down and 7 more to go. Next, head over to port... As before, connect this aggregator's output breaker.
See, that's that thing that happened
Let's make our way to the forward quadrant
didn't quite click it.
Go ahead and connect the output, and the same again on forward battery aggregator 2. Okay, onwards to the starboard quadrant. Same again, connect the out and the second starboard aggregator. Almost done, just the aft quadrant to go. Connect up the first aft aggregator, and finally the second aft aggregator. Okay, perfect. All 48 of the ship's battery arrays are now connected to the electrical grid. All we have to do now is supply power to the ship's remaining decks,
Which way is it
and then
going to
perform a
send
few
me?
cleanup tasks. Follow the waypoints on your HUD
that way.
to
That's
the
a
forward
shame.
deck distributor.
So I was hoping it was going to take the players through, through the maintenance tunnels, down the stairs and everything, but the more efficient route is in fact this way. So it's done that thing where it's picked a location within range, but it's picked it above, on the floor above. So I just need to make sure that this this range check is not so far that it can hit the ceiling.
Each deck in a given quadrant is fed by a deck distributor. Go ahead and connect the output breakers for all 7 decks. Okay, now head over to the starboard deck distributor and do the same.
Oh, this one.
And now the aft deck distributor. And finally, the port deck distributor. Perfect. All quadrants on every deck now have power available from the ship's main battery arrays. You'll notice, however, that the ship is still under To resolve, head over to the G deck forward quadrant distributor. Each deck has 4 of these devices. Go ahead and switch this quadrant over. That's better. Now we can really see what we're doing. Now head over to the starboard quadrant distributor and do the same. And now the aft quadrant distributor. And finally, the port quadrant distributor. That's G deck taken care of. Let's do the same for F deck. Head upstairs to the F deck forward quadrant distributor. As before, switch, and now the same on the starboard quadrant distributor. And again on the aft quadrant distributor. And finally, the port quadrant distributor. Well done. That's the main objectives of the cold start procedure complete. But we have one final bonus task to perform. Follow the waypoints on your HUD up to the bridge, and we'll make the ship flight ready.
Ooh, is it actually going to path us all the way to the bridge in one shot? No. No, it's not. So I might need to put a couple of intermediary steps there. That's interesting. I imagine we've got an incomplete nav mesh there, which is why it's like failing like that. Oh, I'll have a look first, thank you.
The lights and bridge systems are still turned off, so let's bring everything online. Head over to the A deck distributor in the engineering alcove. Now go ahead and turn on the bridge lighting.
I actually won't do that yet. I shall come down here.
Head over to and now the aft deck distributor.
Oh yeah.
And now the aft deck distributor. And now the aft deck and now the aft deck distributor.
Okay. So that's 1, 2, 4, 0. Oh look, show highlighter is unticked. That might very well be the problem. Where are we? This one. Pretty sure that is it fixed, but let's just double check on the screen just to be absolutely 100% doubly sure. Yeah, that is the top one, so fixed it. Not yet, Oni, no. Well, you can jump over the edge of the railing. That'll get you down there. If you can kind of ragdoll over here and fall down, it at least takes you into this room. But you can't get down yet. I need to cut some holes in the floor. Which, to be honest, I've already done. So you'll notice on here, that's all the way down there now, because I've cut holes through the flooring section. Hang on, difficult to get the camera in there. Yeah, so that floor piece and that floor piece have now been cut through, so they no longer intersect with the stairs. But there's a lot of single face geometry there. Like these aren't actually proper thick pieces of geometry. They're literally just a plain mesh, unlike the walls, which are solid. It's going to be difficult to get the player down there in a smooth way anytime soon, but I am working on it little bit by little bit. Okay, so for the only target issue we had was this one, wasn't it? So that was, if we go back, that was this one here. So that was sending us to the top. Move that down a bit more. Hopefully that will fix that. Actually, if it's down on this floor, it might actually properly send us through the maintenance tunnels, which would be nice. Let's make it a bit lower, just to force it. So something I noticed, it was the nav mesh stops here, which is why it couldn't path to the bridge. So the whole central column has no nav mesh, so we need to fix that. The nav mesh gets right up my nose. So we want framework sheet, framework walls, and interior. Sheet, walls, interior. Sheet, walls, interior. So we're only calculating the nav mesh against the most relevant objects. So we don't need the power objects loaded, we don't need snap guides or the HVAC. Basically anything that's like stuck in a ceiling, it doesn't need to be around for calculating the nav mesh, because it's not something the player ever needs to collide with in a navigating kind of way. Right, so if we now build our paths, we should fill this with green. There we go. Right, so that should hopefully go all the way up to the top and all the way to the bridge. Okay. Yeah, we got a path through here now, so that helps. Right, let's give that another quick try. Yeah, hopefully that's fixed now, Ethan. Simon, so the backer builds we had that included custom vessels, basically we have 12 that we need to build, and they were part of Kickstarter, and we're not going to open up any more commissions for those until those 12 are done. So we want to get them done, polished, and in the game. And then we'll be opening up further commissions on a one at a time basis. So that'll be either a first come first served, or we'll do an auction or something and find somewhere handling
Welcome
that.
to the Magellan class. The ship is to begin. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to the lower floor of the reactor room.
I'm going to whiz through this as quickly as I can.
As you can see, follow the waypoints on your HUD to the startup distributor. As its name suggests, the startup distributor. Stop. And now and final. Excellent. The reactor controls should now be online, so let's walk back to the reactor room and take a look. This console displays as the first. Great. The chamber. While we wait, exit the reactor room via the door behind you, and follow the waypoints on your HUD to these storage tanks. All four. Let the cryo start up these valves. Go ahead. We now need to head over to the helium-3 cryo cooler next. Helium-3 and now next we need to start filling the 2 deuterium. We stored and now okay. For our make your way around. Next. Power on the pump. It's excellent. As before. And now in perfect. Or we head over to the helium now. And finally, there we go. Follow the waypoints back to the reactor room, where we have just a few more valves to open. To complete now make your way around to the opposite side of the reactor. First, open the deuterium and now okay, great. Let's head over. As you can see, we now have coolant flowing. This one, okay, with for safety. This means let's resolve. You'll note, okay, with the the rest, go ahead. Head over to the main battery. This device takes the go ahead. Perfect. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to port battery room 1. The electrical supply on Magellan-class starships is divided into 4 isolated quadrants: forward, aft, port, and starboard. Should the battery arrays in one room similarly,
yeah,
power to one quadrant can be lost entirely.
The Roomba now waits
without impacting
for
the supply
a
to
certain
remaining
amount
3
of
quadrants.
grime before it targets a floor panel.
Let's take on the left. And if we did it for the next, this task, follow the waypoints on your HUD to port battery aggregator 1. Each battery room has a go ahead. Okay. Next. As before. That takes. Go ahead. And the second. Okay. Same again. And the second. Almost done. Connect up the first aft aggregator. And finally, the second aft aggregator. Okay. All we have to do, follow the waypoints on your HUD to the forward deck distributor.
Yay, it's sending us the way I want it to send us.
Each deck in a given quadrant is fed by a... Go ahead and Okay, now head over to the starboard deck distributor. And now the aft deck distributor. And finally, the port deck distributor. Perfect. All quadrants on every deck now have power of... You'll note to head over to the G deck forward quadrant. Each deck has 4 of these and finally, and now the aft quadrant distributor.
Ah, balls. Yeah, see, it didn't send us up here last time. I'm going to lower the nav radius that it has. That should fix that.
And finally, that's G deck. Head upstairs to the F deck forward quadrant distributor. As before, and now the same on the starboard quadrant distributor.
Same again. It's targeted the floor above. To be fair, that one is quite high up.
And again on the and finally, well done. That's the main objectives of the cold. Follow the waypoints on your HUD up to the bridge, and we'll make the ship flight ready.
Where is it sending us? Yeah, that's nowhere near the bridge. Yeah, I think for some of these I'm going to have to add some intermediary points just to make sure it navigates us the right way. There we go, now it's figured it out. Question is, did it place it in the right spot? Hurrah.
The lights and bridge systems are still turned off, so let's bring everything online. Head over to the A-deck distributor in... Now go ahead and turn on the bridge lighting. And... okay, there we go. This concludes the Magellan-class Cold Start training module.
Okay. Right, so when we pick ourselves a new nav mesh location, which I will attempt to find. No, I didn't want to duplicate it. Okay, we're giving it way too much height on its search criteria, so I'll make that 50-50 by 100. Now I worry that it's actually not going to reach the floor if it's higher than a meter. So I think what I'll do is I will fire a line trace down so that we're navigating to the floor location. So if we get our arrow, well, may as well just use that, I guess. Let me get location and line trace by channel. So that, and then we break that vector and we do that minus good. Oops. Yeah, let's give it a 3 meter drop. So we're basically just gonna shoot a line trace at the floor from the position of the highlighter, and that will give us our path end point. Yeah, there, that one even. So we need to break that. Get our hit location. Right, so that should, and we can make that 50 now. That should be firing a line trace at the ground and then trying to path to that point, regardless of where we put the actual visible marker. Let's just see whether that actually worked a minute.
The ship is... To begin, follow the waypoints on your HUD to the lower floor of the reactor room. As you can see, the reactor is offline. And Alpha, follow the waypoints on your HUD to the startup distributor. As its name, you'll know... And now the... And fine, excellent. The reactor controls should now be online, so let's walk back to the reactor room. This the first thing, great. Now, the chamber, while we wait, exit the reactor room via the door behind you, and follow the waypoints on your HUD to the cryogenic storage. These storage tanks hold all four. Let's start with the helium coolant. These valves, go ahead. We now need, head over to the helium-3, and now, deuterium, we store double as, and now, okay. Make your way open, excellent, as, and perfect, head, and there we go. To complete the coolant, follow the waypoints back to the reactor room, where we have just a few more valves to open. To complete... Now, first, open the
Hey,
tutorial.
Tom.
And
All
now...
good, thank you.
Okay, as you can see, we now... Okay, great. Let's head over to... As you can see... This... One... Okay. With... For safety. This means let's resolve... You'll notice... Okay. With the This device... Perfect. If we now head around to the opposite side of the reactor output distributor should now be powered up.
What I might do in the future, not now, Claire, please don't shout at me, is I will divorce the location of
the reactors. Perfect. If we now head around
the
to
actual
opposite side of
visible
the reactor
target
output
to the
distributor should
point
now
where
be
it
powered
needs the
up.
path. So I'll have two independent indicators, basically, an invisible one which tells the path where to go, and a visible one that actually, highlights the object of interest for the player, because otherwise we're having to move the visible target somewhere silly.
The rest go. Go. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to port battery room 1. The electrical supply on Magellan-class starships is divided into... Should, similarly, power to one quadrant. On... If... Follow... As... That takes care of the port battery rooms. Go ahead and connect the out... And the same... Oh, same... And the second... Almost done. Connect up the first... And finally... Okay, perfect. All we have to... Follow the waypoints on your HUD to the forward deck distributor. Each deck in a given quadrant is fed by a deck distributor, which takes the total electrical load of that quadrant, and then load balances it between the two.
The tutorial will be exactly the same. Well, at least this one will be, the cold and dark. The scanning and navigation tutorial is completely different. What I'm doing is I'm just fixing the waypoint generator, because before we had this really kind of brute force clunky approach where we just left target markers around the ship, and the problem we had is people would turn away, not see them, wander off in the opposite direction and then get lost. So what we're doing now is we're drawing an actual 3D path in the world that updates in real time, so you literally can't get lost. It is impossible to get lost now. But because it's using the nav mesh to draw the path, sometimes it doesn't draw it in the right place, so I'm just building in some redundancies to make sure that doesn't happen.
And now the aft deck distributor.
Just making sure that top one's there.
And finally, the port deck. Perfect. You'll notice, however, that the ship is still... To resolve, head over to the... And now the... And that's G deck taken care of. Head upstairs to the F deck forward quadrant distributor. As before, and now... And fun. Well done. Follow the waypoints on your HUD up to the bridge, and we'll make the ship flight ready.
So the fact that it's trying to push me up there to get to the bridge, I think is because the nav mesh is basically failing to reach the bridge. Like, it doesn't know how to get there from here, it's just too far away. So once we get to this position, we are now close enough to the bridge that it can work it out. Otherwise it thinks we need to go up the stairs underneath the data center. This will also affect NPC pathing as well. So if say an engineer right on the bottom of the ship needs to go to the bridge, that engineer NPC will go the wrong way. So what we're going to have to do is we'll have breakout points on each deck. So that will also allow the engineer or other NPC to use things like the stairs and the lift. So if we know what deck their target is on, so say they're going to the bridge, they need to be on A deck, we will tell them, right, you need to go to the nearest staircase or the nearest lift. They'll go there first, and then repath to the next deck. So on and so on until they reach the deck they're trying to get to. So they're not having to then try and path through the entire ship all at once.
The lights and bridge systems are still turned off. Head over to the A-deck distributor in the engineering alcove.
That worked perfectly. Right, let's have a quick look at our bug list a minute. Right, so that definitely still needs fixing. That might be fixed now. That's not fixed yet. Okay, I thought we had that raised as a bug, but obviously not. Not to worry. Right, so the other major block we had with that was laggy sensors. So let's see if we can figure out what on earth is going on with that. Yeah, VR is next. Yeah, it might be the lift. It shouldn't be. I think it's more the case that there is a path up the staircase in the reactor room, which is basically 2 decks below the bridge. And as far as the nav mesh is concerned, or at least the nav mesh agent that's looking for a path, it's getting as close to it as it can by going up those stairs and then failing to find a path the rest of the way, so it just gives up. It doesn't know that if it goes the other way, it can path all the way to the bridge. So I think having deck separation for our pathing, and then having entry and exit points that are predefined on each deck, means that the NPC crew will always head to an exit and entry point before transitioning to the next deck, which means we have more control over where those NPCs actually go. I also want to make them stick to one side of the corridor so they're not like colliding with each other, but that's a future challenge. Hey Jim. All good, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, this is just the default mesh that always comes up in the chairs. Right now, the chairs show a copy of your character when you sit in them. Once we dump ALS and do the character system properly, you'll have your actual character physically sat in the chair, and these guys, naked guys, won't need to be here anymore. Well, that's weird, Festus. That's really weird. I couldn't even begin to imagine what was causing that. I think I'd have to do some like side-by-side timings to confirm that that's definitely happening. I mean, just the fact you're looking at it different shouldn't affect the way it operates in the background. Although this is game dev and these things do happen. Right. This particular system is quite quite big, so just need to find the right bit of it. So we got the long range sensors there. Let's grab the widget as well. Right, so here's our long range targets. That's our list view that lists all the targets. And here is our widget class for the list items, which is these guys. And here's where we handle clicking them. So an item selection changed. This should go here, and then we update our selection. Okay, so we're sending that to the player controller for replication. It then comes back from the player controller as a server authoritative event. We are then getting the detail, so we're generating the details. Okay, so that is basically generating the star system. Okay. So this should only be happening on the server. And then we're only refreshing the visible list items. We're not drawing the entire list all over again. At least we shouldn't be. So that's just... yeah, that's just scaling the orrery map accordingly. Right, let me just try this on my test map a minute. Yeah, we have some large airlocks on C-Deck Lurie, which are big enough to have a separate atmosphere zone and like some sofas or something, just to, like, as a little meeting area. We can't condition the whole ship for a different atmosphere for an alien that's visiting. So if they were visiting, they could only really go as far as the airlock, and that room inside the airlock would have to be obviously purged and conditioned for them. And then any crew members meeting them in that part of the ship would obviously need an encounter suit of some kind. And the same would be true for doing EVAs and going down to planets that have different atmospheres. You will need to use a suit of some kind. yeah, so like Claire's saying, when we update, so that the process will be this. Tonight, I think we're in a position to do it now. We will update a new branch on the public demo, which will be a beta branch, so people can do some beta testing of the public demo before we make it properly live to the public at large. Anyone will be able to go on there and switch to the public branch. We're not going to put a password on it or anything, so you can just literally select the demo branch and give it a try. And then once we're happy that we've fixed all of the bugs, all the showstoppers and all the things that are causing issues, then we will make it like properly live to the default branch on the demo, and then we'll do all the publicity and shout from the rooftops that the demo's been updated. I'll do a video covering what's in the new updates and a massive list of patch notes. Obviously the dev build is the dev build. That'll be updated a couple of times a week, as always. That's never going to change. So whether we're putting a demo build out or not, we're still going to be updating the development branch. In fact, we will always update the development branch first, and then also upload to the demo at the same time. So it always goes on the dev build first. As for how long we're going to be having it open for beta, I don't know. It depends on how long it takes to fix all the bugs. But once that's then live, we will draw a line under patch cycle 225, finally moving on. And then we will look forward to 226. But in the interim between 225 and 226, I will be putting out a demo of the VR capabilities. And that'll be a separate thing, just to basically show that VR is coming and this is how it will work, and just a taster really of what VR is going to be like in the game. And then we'll be full steam ahead working on the bridge NPCs. Yeah, good idea, Oninani. Yeah, we'll have to put on it somewhere that this is like an alpha of the alpha, or like a pre-release stress test or something like that. Basically, it's a beta bug fixing release, so that the public at large can report bugs and find the things that everyone else has missed to date. It's always the way. The more people you have playing it and the more eyes you have on it, the more likely it is you're going to pick up the really obscure bugs. So it's going to be valuable to have that on there for a couple of weeks, just so people can be hitting it hard and finding out all the issues for us, of which I'm sure there will be many, because there always is. Right, let's just try this in a faux multiplayer. So that's that part, and then this is the other player, and they have a different list of stars because they haven't got access to the same SQL data as the host, which means that none of those are going to highlight. So we need to break the galaxy data a sec. So basically, if we just untick that, then we're skipping the real world stars. So both the client and the server will have the same procedurally generated galaxy. Right, so this guy should have them stars. And then this one should have the same stars. So if he clicks that one, then he should see that one clicked. And then, so I've clicked that one, and it's updated immediately on the server. So if I click the T-class star, you can see that on the server, they're all updating straight away. But they're not updating on the client, which is a good thing. it's good that it's not working, because one of the biggest challenges in fixing multiplayer issues, especially in the local environment, is actually having it go wrong, because these things tend to behave differently depending on what you're doing. That one, right? So we replicate that on the player controller. We send it back straight away from the player controller. Right, so if we do an authority check on that and make sure that only the server can do this, then we're basically just then relying on this updating the client. Sort of quick as me. The galaxy data is massive, and we generate that on the client, on the server at the same time. So we're not passing like 30,000 odd star systems in an array over the network, because that would be mad. So we generate that on the client, and then the client has access to that when the server says, right, the sensors are now looking at this page, list all the stars. The client will look at its local version of those stars and perform the listing using that, rather than using the server's version. Now, it's doing very little in the way of anything. So this runs on the client. So we're running that. I'll have a look at that in a sec. We're broadcasting the sensors state files. This is basically this is the state file for the sensors. So this basically contains all the sensors data, like which thing's targeted, which page you're on, what your zoom levels are, all of it is contained within that. And we broadcast that out as a global event for all the other game systems to do with what they will. So this is like an anonymous broadcast. And that's just a bunch of texture generating stuff that only becomes relevant when we're generating textures. So this is the main function, and then we basically separate out depending on which mode we're using. So in this case, it would go straight into the long range mode, and then do all of this. So I imagine that somewhere along here we're probably generating data that we don't need to generate. Yeah, so it's basically everything about the sensors is server authoritative. We're trying to make everything server authoritative as much as possible. The only things that are client side are things that are heavy. So any heavy processing happens on the client. Everything else happens on the server. So So the client's running this. This is like the local version of the UI. Because the UIs themselves cannot replicate. It's just a thing with widgets in Unreal. They do not replicate. So you have to kind of crowbar replication into them by using a parent blueprint, which then manages replicated variables, which you then fire off at the UI, which is what all this is. Now, one thing that we do is we send action messages with each of these updates, which we kind of process here. So we can force certain events on an update by firing an action message. And in this particular one, we are refreshing visible list items. I think that was the one we're doing. Let's get rid of some of these tabs a minute. Too many tabs. Yeah, so we're sending refresh visible list items, which is this one here. So this is what we're actually doing. So we're going through only the widgets that are visible, and then we're basically updating them to see whether or not they have been selected. And I think in order to work out where the delay is coming from here, we're just going to have to do some debug spam. Because I'm not sure at what point in the process the lag's coming from. So all this is happening on the server anyway, which we're ensuring with this. So it's not until we run the set with rep notify on this variable that the client gets involved. So the client action starts here. Now this is fired no matter what happens on the sensors. So this will get spammed a lot, but let's just see a minute. Sensors data update. So when the client clicks on any of those list items, we want to see a yellow message on both the client and server at the same time. So if I click that T-class star, now, interestingly, it's doing. Oh, of course, it's doing an update at the moment, which is basically just updating a couple of variables, which of course is firing off that update message, which is useless to us for debug purposes. So let's move that error message or debug message further down the chain. So when we are polling for the ground truth of the ship data, we're doing that at 30 FPS. So of course at 30 Hertz this is being fired. We're firing it with skip refresh, so it doesn't ever get further than this, it just updates the variables. But because it's a rep notify, obviously this fires on all the clients every single time. So we only want that to spam something when we're actually clicking on something. Okay, so There's the server, there's the client. So when I click this T-class star, we want to see a yellow message on both exactly the same time. So we've seen the server, nothing from the client. Which is interesting. Which means that technically that didn't replicate. So we're getting a response from the server, nothing from the client. Okay. I have to move this off screen a minute so I can see it. So when we change modes, you can see that the client and the server are both responding to that update. So they're both performing that action. And then when we click one of these, only the server is responding. So I see then it updated. So only the server, only the server. And then both. Interesting. I wonder if there's actually a... I was going to say a limit on replications per second, but that would also affect changing tabs, and it doesn't. Okay, so that helps narrow it down a bit. So we're always relevant. Let's try and make this spam the network a little bit more. Being that it's one of the most important things on the bridge right now, we are actually, let's push up the net priority as well. Like, we want this thing to replicate practically above everything else. See, I could also... like, when we're checking our ship state, what? Okay, so we're only doing that once a second, so that's actually... That's negligible, that's not doing anything. So that doesn't need to be there because we have confirmed that it is server-side, and that's implied. And now we've got the bug where I can't delete it. Thanks, Quickosme. Have a good one. I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of it. So only the server should be doing this. It does, yeah. It also comes with a McAfee subscription. Right, so client and server acting in tandem. Server is correctly doing its job. And then it's quicker. I think adjusting those replication settings might actually have helped, you know. Let's try this on the client and see how that feels. I think I spoke too soon. Yeah, it's basically what's happening, or not at all. So it seems to be entirely random whether or not it's going to replicate, which is weird. Like, no, that one failed, that one failed, that one failed, and that one succeeded. So what does that tell us? Right, so we know that this is only running on the server, and I still can't delete anything. It's a weird bug, that. We've had that since like 5.3. Sometimes you just like can't delete stuff from the graph until you run the game and close it again. So we know that the server, and only the server, is setting the data, which is what we want. And then when we come into the rep notify, this is best practice, because I've been reading about that over the past couple of days. Like, you know, what is the best practice for doing this as far as Epic are concerned? So for like one-off events that are not time dependent as such, you use like a multicast remote procedure call. So you fire off for a multicast RPC for things like explosions or whatever. But if it's like a data thing that you want to be synced across clients, you should be using rep notify, which is what we are. So the actor is replicated, and it's doing everything it needs to do on everything except listing the long-range sensors. So I imagine this is something to do with the amount of stuff. I wonder if it's the fact it's having to generate the star system data. I bet that's probably where we're hitting the issue. Right, I'm going to skip that. So we're not actually generating the star system. Which of course is now going to cause it to freak out in all kinds of ways. Unhook that. Is that good enough? No. There we go. Right, so let's remove that overhead and see whether that fixes it. Yeah, so the way this works is, as before, these widget interfaces, they do not replicate and cannot replicate, which means we can't just automatically replicate button presses over the network. So what we do is when the client or the server press one of these buttons, we send an event across to the player controller, which exists on the server and the client, to turn that into a server action, and then the server then essentially multicasts out an update to all the clients to say this button's been pressed, and then that action happens on all the clients. So we're kind of forcing replication in the background. So there is that breadcrumb trail where we have to send that button press away, turn it into a server event, and then bring it back to actually perform the action. And when we're clicking on all the different modes and things, you can see that's working perfectly. It's happening on the client and the server at the same time. And I'm hoping it will here as well. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see that it's updating client and server perfectly. Let me bring the client in a minute. So the client can click and it updates the server, and that's happening instantly. So at least we know where that's coming from. I think, yeah, the scroll works on the client as well. So when the client scrolls, you can see the server scrolling. It doesn't work the other way around, as far as I'm aware. Hang on, let me move that out of the way a minute. Just to confirm. Yeah, so the server scrolling doesn't scroll the client, but the client scrolling does scroll the server, which is weird because it's usually the other way around. So we now know, through a process of elimination, that this is the problem. So I think either... see, it can't be a timing problem because the client doesn't actually get triggered to do anything until here anyway. So it's not until we get to that point that the client is even aware that this is happening. So therefore it must be a data size problem. Perhaps we're generating too much stuff, maybe? The replication to the client is what's failing. So we've established that the button press is working perfectly, because no matter who presses the button, client or server, this message is being spammed. So we know that the replicated variable is doing its thing, and that's being spammed on the server even if the client presses the button. So yes, and the menu always updates on the server consistently. So I think what's happening is we are generating a reasonable chunk of data here, but not a huge amount of data. It's the reason I've left this server side is because it's actually, you know, like 13, 14 planets worth of data. It's not a lot of data, and it doesn't contain like images or anything, so it's not exactly a heavy payload. But I'm thinking the payload on this is what's causing the replication to be flaky. I think the update message is perhaps too big, but then the size of the variable isn't changing, because see, that's the confusing thing. Hang on, let me run it again and try and express my thoughts coherently. So right now, the replicated data doesn't have any star systems in it because we haven't clicked on anything. The moment we click on something, as so, we have now generated all of the planets for that star system, and that happens every time you click on something here, and has to happen because if you align to target, obviously they need to be there. So the act of clicking it is what generates it. But now that we've clicked on one, that now exists in the data. So if we go over here and click these buttons, that data packet is still the same size, because the planet that we clicked on previously, we don't clear that data out. We don't reset that variable. So, you know, we have increased the packet size by clicking on something, but now that is set. That's a consistent packet size, and yet it's still working perfectly on the client. So I think that tells us that it's not a packet size issue. It's probably more of a timing issue. Although I don't understand how it could be a timing issue, because all of this happens before the client gets involved. So why don't we stick a delay node in here? Just let's delay it by a second, which is a long time, and that will also delay it on the server as well. But let's just see whether that fixes it, just to rule that out a minute. Yeah, node-based coding is so nice when you're debugging, because you can follow the logic chain really, really easily. Oh, that's interesting. See, it's failing on the server. Hang on, what? Oh, I thought it was working only on the client then, just to be weird. Although it's working better on the client, but now it's not working on the server. yeah, delaying the action is definitely doable. The thing is, the actual act of generating a star system isn't as much data overhead as you might think. It does it fairly quickly. But what's interesting is now that we've delayed it, it's not doing it on the server. Like, the server is now the thing with the problem. Fascinating. This is why I love programming, which may seem contrary to logic, but I love the challenge of trying to work this stuff out. And it's like, right, it's broken. Why is it broken? And then trying to figure out why it's broken. Okay, so rather than putting the delay there, why don't we put it here instead? So we're firing this function. And that's just responding with the data. We're specifically flagging it for sensors, which means it generates a lower amount of data, so as not to cause too much spam. See, that's not doing anything too extreme. So I don't think it's that necessarily that's the problem. But yeah, let's try delaying it there a minute. I shall do that in a sec first, just and see. Okay, so the client clicks that. The client clicks that. Click. Yeah, so you can see that it's taking the second to update on the server and not the client. So delaying it doesn't help. So the only other thing that we could do Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not we generate the data before we replicate anything, and then we store that data in a variable. So hang on, I'm trying to get my head through this. Right, now that won't work because this is a non-replicated event. So if one client clicks the button, whatever you put here will only fire on that client. So that's no good to us. What needs to happen is we need a multicast to force it to generate on the client. Let's grab our player controller a minute. So these are all our replicated events that happen. It's going to be one of these. So I think it was update sensor target, wasn't it? I don't know. sensors long range selection, which would be this one. So it's really, really simple. It comes through into a player controller. We then convert that into a server event like this. Now see, that's interesting. We're not setting it as reliable. Let's give that a try. I mean, that shouldn't make a difference because it's the variable at the other end that isn't replicating, but let's make that a reliable server event and then we'll see. So by making it reliable, it means that it will not fail. So, you know, if there's packet loss and the packet is lost, it will just retry. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. Yeah, so again, the server is responding instantly, as we would expect, and the client is only responding sometimes. Okay, so that didn't help, but progress is progress. So what I could do, see, I can make this a multicast. Because if I make it a multicast, then basically all clients are going to be running this now. So if we have, hang on, let me just make sure, right, so sensors long range selection, sensors long range selection, right, so we're definitely running the right event. Right, so by multicasting this, all clients and server are now doing this. Let's just verify that by way of some spam. Because my thinking here is if I do a switch on authority here, then we can have the server and the clients generate a local copy of the data. But then the server still needs to be the one that's updating the variable. But we could store that separately, which means we wouldn't be passing it through over the network. There is Oninani, yeah. So what you can do is you can do has authority. So you can do this. So basically, if you're the server, you do that. If you're the client, you do that. So we can easily split client and server actions, because it's only the server that's even capable of updating this variable. Yeah, so this this variable here, this is what's being replicated. So the sensor's data, this is like the mother load. This is like the master sensor's state file that contains all of the sensor's data. Like if I scroll down, this is all the stuff that's contained within that struct. There's loads and loads and loads of stuff. And this allows any game system to know completely what's happening on the sensor screen. We use it for the holo display and the helm and various other bits and pieces. So we pass this variable around to let other systems know what the sensors have on them. So what we do is we generate the star system details. We then update that struct with those star system details. And that's the local copy on the server, because we're just doing a set members. And we then update the replicated version of that. Because if you update it via a reference and just set members, that doesn't trigger the rep notify. At least it doesn't, as far as I've seen. So this in itself is insufficient for replication. You have to force it to replicate by then setting itself with itself, essentially. So you're basically setting a server-side copy there, then replicating it out. Now what's happening, or rather what's not happening, is the client isn't reliably performing the actions that the rep notify triggers. So a rep notify variable has its own event graph and it can do stuff. So whenever that variable changes its value, or whenever any members within that struct change their value, this code is run. And that's not being run consistently on the client. It's running sometimes, but not every time, which tells us it's a networking issue. And then we have the additional complication that it works perfectly if we don't generate the data. So it's the act of generating the data before we handle the replication which is stopping it from replicating. Which would make you think it's probably a packet size problem, but it can't be a packet size problem because this data is always the same size, and it's only the listing which doesn't work. So there's something specific about this, maybe. I mean, I could see, where are we here? So that's so that's the data that we're generating. So if I get rid of that, so that would be the struct that holds all the star systems and such. Let's just see whether that works a minute. And for the sake of testing, I shall put that back to server only. Because the other way of solving this is we do it the same way we do it for the actual mega list of star systems, which we just handle the generation on the client. Well, the data's not actually generated on the client, it's contained within the struct. So we're passing the data to the client. And what's happening is the client is failing to receive or failing to run the rep notify. See, right now it's working perfectly. So I'm clicking through those star systems and it's updating instantly. Now the only thing that's different is I have told it to not generate the data. So that aside, we're not doing this bit. It's the only thing we're not doing. So we're still generating the data. So we're still going through the process of doing this because we're extracting some information from it, i.e. what the selected object is, i.e. the central star, because we're getting the first thing in the list. So we're going through the process. We are putting some of that data into the struct via this. It's literally like I could make the same amount of data just by doing that. Like I can populate it with garbage or just the default values. Yeah, it is sometimes, and that's the problem we're having. It's not being called reliably. So this is working perfectly. Nothing wrong with that. And that's by populating the location details manually here. Now the only thing that this is missing that contains is this. Is all the planets. So if I was to like make an array from there and then make one of them, like there are like 13 or so versions of this with all of its data, which again is not a huge amount of data really. It's kind of negligible. So why does that break it? Yeah, it's not network reliably, basically. I just realized the music stopped. Hang on, I shall fix that. Basically, yes. I mean, what we could... Actually, another thing we could do. Right, so if we break that a minute, or even better, if we set members in this, and specifically the satellite objects, and then we make array and basically have an empty array, then we put that in there, then what we've done is we've just basically stripped out all the planet data. So we'll see whether it's the planet data which is too big. Because if this fixes it, that's basically what's happening. There's too much planet data to be replicated all at once in that struct. Although, oddly, not when you change tabs, because it does it fine then. Yeah, so that's fine. So you can see it's generating the description and everything here. And it's getting that description from that generated data. Actually, I'm just wondering whether we need the data at that point, or does it regenerate it here? Ah, yeah, so it is using that data to display the star system, which obviously we need at that point. Now, something else we could do maybe is generate the data when we align to target instead, which preserves the ability to click through quickly. The only thing we'll have a problem with is displaying the civ data on here. So once you've explored it and you know about an alien race, we want to be able to put this as part of their summary, and that wouldn't be possible without generating the data like immediately when you click on it. Okay. Yeah, see, the funny thing, Wan Monkey, is that data, once placed into the struct, stays in the struct, and then when you're clicking between the different tabs and things, it works fine, it replicates fine, even though that data is still there within that struct. It doesn't seem to like it at the point where you insert it into the struct, and that's the point where it falls on its face. So we know that it's the planet data which is bulking it out too much. And we also know we can't strip that data because we need it. So I think the only practical solution here is going to be to generate and store the planet data locally, the same way we do with the list of star systems. So when we where are we? Here. So when we come down here and generate our sector data, we do that locally and we store it locally, and then we access that local data when we come to display things on the sensors. So yeah, I think that's the only solution, because if it's not going to support that amount of data over the network, then yes, doing it locally and storing it locally is the only way forward. And that also means that it removes any limitation we might have on the size of a star system. So if we want to do a star system with, say, 500 planets, way out there as an edge case, by storing the data locally, then we can do that without having to push that amount of bloat over the network. What time is it? So it's 11 p.m. here in the UK, and we want to get this update out. So I'm just thinking about how I can bodge and or improve this for the time being. Yeah, the problem we've got, Zephnoli, is the data is generated as a single packet of data, and we're then placing that packet of data within the struct, and it's not liking the size of this when we replicate it. I'm going to do something mad a minute. This may seem like pure insanity, but this might hilariously work. Did that just work? It's saying we're too far away. How far does it think we are? Yeah, sort of. The issue we have is late joiners. So when we start a multiplayer session, if everyone were in a lobby and all started the game at the same time, then events could happen on demand more easily. The problem we have is we have an open session, so players can log in and duck out anytime they want. And because we've got players kind of joining and leaving arbitrarily, we need to make sure that people that are joining midway through a session are seeing the latest version of everything that happened before they joined, which you can't really track with on-demand remote procedural calls. So we have to store things in variables and replicate those variables so that we, take into account late joiners. But hilariously, this does seem to be working. I'm not quite sure why it's not showing that though. Thinks we're out of range on stuff, but let me see whether that is still the case with only one client. Yeah, I think I know where you're going with that. Yes, you can. You can have things go stale and track it with like an epoch or something. But it is easier on the whole just to generate the data locally and store it on the client. So, like in this instance, we have on the replicated variable, we have the address of the star system which is currently targeted. Now, if no data exists for that, then we need to trigger you need to generate this data on the client. They can then display that data on the sensors. Which is not how it's working right now. Right now we're generating it on the server, and then we're storing that data as part of the rep notify variable. Basically, yes. I mean, that is the rule of thumb. Like everything here is dynamic, though. Like everything you do on the sensors is dynamic. That's weird. Why does it think everything's out of range? Where does it think we are? So it thinks we're there. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's me not paying attention. Right, yeah, you're right, sorry. Right, let's try this again then. See, this is why I like having you guys on stream, because you spot stuff that I miss. I'm in live chat. Yeah, I do change it when I stream from top chat to live chat, because I do miss stuff otherwise. But no, this is just me not paying attention. Right, let's try that on the server a sec. Right, data.
Initiating long-range survey.
Yeah, don't do that. Right, let's try this again properly. Yeah, do that in the future. Yeah, if it's something I've missed, then yeah, ping me. Or what if? We'll give it half a second and then basically try again. Because that should be set perfectly on the server, and the server is the thing that's doing the replicating. So perhaps that will fix it. No. So yeah, it basically has to be a packet size issue. That's all it can be. But I don't understand how it could be, for the simple fact that, as I said, like, the data is there and we're passing around the same struct when we go between different modes. I think it did fail once there actually, but like, the data packet is the same size and we're able to replicate the tabs, no problem at all. So I don't quite see why having a star system as part of the data is anything to do with it. Although that's interesting, it's refusing to align to target as well. This is using UDP. Good question, Oninoni. I'd have to go and find one. Yeah, there are things you can do within Unreal to make UDP reliable, in the sense that if an event is not received, then it will keep retrying until it is. So you can get over it a little bit like that. Like if you mark an event as reliable, it will just keep going until it receives it. Maybe. Well, I think the answer is obvious, isn't it? And it's been obvious all along, and that is, we can't pass this over the network. It has to be generated locally. And by generated locally, that opens the door to other things like massive star systems. So in the long run, local generation is the way to go. But that's going to take a bit of a rewrite of some of this, which I won't get done in the next hour. So, Claire, question for you. Does laggy sensors for the client in multiplayer mean a blocker for putting the debug build out? Are we comfortable with the beta build having laggy sensors for clients, basically? And it'll only be for a couple of days because I'll get it fixed, but for tonight. To be fair, they're more than slightly laggy. They don't work at all sometimes, but I think, yeah, it's only affecting clients in multiplayer. So if you're playing the game single player, it's perfectly fine. And I would assume most people will be playing it single player to test. Obviously, we wouldn't go live with this, but I'm just wondering whether or not we're all right for a beta release. It's only people on Discord, really, that are going to see it. Yeah, I'm happy to do it with a disclaimer. Hang on. Let's let the community vote on it. If I can work out how to do polls again. Yeah, very good. Start a poll. Yeah, just here on Discord. It'll be a branch on the demo. Hang on, I'll make it right now. Where are we? Right, so basically this is our Steamworks. We want to go to the Steamworks admin on the demo. Go to the builds. So these are our branches. You can see that the last build we put out was November 23. It was a lifetime ago. So we want to create a new app branch, and we will call it pre-release test. Okay, there we go. We have our branch. There's nothing on it yet. So I shall go and upload a build on that branch. I think the poll was quite conclusive. I'm guessing Claire voted no. Right, so save all of that. Oh, it's very brave of you. Yeah, I think we'll scribble some stuff on it actually, just to make sure that people are aware it's a pre-release test. Where's the HUD class gone? So I can't update the tech demo 3 bit because that's a texture. I might be able to update some other bit of it. Couldn't see the loading screen then. Right, so we want main menu. So we do have, or at least we did have this pop-up. Yeah, to be honest, the more bugs we can find now, the better. I'll put some blurbage on here. Nighty night. Have a good one. This is a pre-release test build of the upcoming demo update. It has a number of issues, including instability in multiplayer. Please use F1 to report any bugs you find to help us get this polished as much as possible ahead of the actual demo update. Let's make sure that that is actually closable. This is where I obsess over the wording now. Hey Alfie, all good, thanks. Yeah, modding. Wow. So it depends on what you want to mod. We've already got a SQL database locally that you can add star systems to. Obviously, they're very basic right now. It's literally just a star which procedurally generates planets, but you can name it and define whether or not there's life there. So you could, like for example, recreate the known universe of something that you're into. That is possible already. But all the planets will be procedurally generated. You can't define those yet. In terms of ship modding and adding new ships, I don't think that's practical. I'm sure someone might find a way, but it's not a simple, straightforward thing to do. Mission creator is something that we definitely like to experiment with at some point in the future. And some kind of template system for updating the 3D meshes within ships. So you could make your own wall panels, for example, if you don't like the default ones. Just things like that. Yes, playable alien races will be a thing. Stop fiddling with it now. Yeah, uniform customization was something that we purposefully didn't do because we didn't want people to get confused. The same was true for like custom alert states and things. Like if you board someone's ship and it's like mauve alert and everyone's wearing pink, it's like what's going on? What does mauve alert mean, and what does the pink uniforms represent? You know, it could lead to a situation where it's just really confusing for players not knowing who's what and where. But I guess the rule of cool dictates that you should be able to customize things if it's possible. So we'll have a look into that. Yeah, I'm behind on the stream too. Right, so that's done. That's done. That's done. I think the pop-up kind of says it all, really. So let's go ahead and package that. Yeah, it's entirely doable. I mean, one of the things that doesn't work like what it should right now, on the server listing, you should be able to filter for types of server. So, you know, things like if it's a roleplay server or just a standard server, we want people to be able to filter those separately. So I guess, you know, once the ability to filter the server list on a criteria is there, it's easy to add further criteria to that. But yeah, I mean, modders will mod. I mean, I was part of the modding scene way back in like the original Grand Theft Auto days, and yeah, I made mods for stuff, and you know, you just find a way. Game engines aren't that locked down. You can always inject stuff. Yeah, we've already actually got the components in place for voice chat. It just needs configuring and setting up. Have a good one, Zuckbox. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some things you just end up going down rabbit holes, and like a simple task ends up needing like 10 different bits of code ripped apart. Not sure, Oni. Definitely not for this demo release. And probably not before VR either. What I do want to do is we've got the pro version of the multiplayer subsystem that we're using, and I want to give that a test run before we implement it. And that's got all voice chat and things built into it as well. So once we test that out, then we can give it a whirl and see. Right, let me just do the upload. Alright, this is going on a different branch, isn't it? So I need to grab the different branch ID and add a depot. I won't do this on screen because it like shows passwords and things. Yep. Well, the thing with the sensors rework is it also involved galaxy stuff as well. So as we added more features to the sensors, those features needed supporting code on the galaxy side of things as well. So they were kind of one and the same. The stream is probably going to really suffer while I upload this. So moons and multi-star systems doesn't require a massive sensors rework as such, but it does require an enhancement to the data structure, and that's the only reason we don't have it right now. So the galaxy that we have is built very much around a single star with planets orbiting it, and that's like just a set thing. But yeah, to add multiple objects orbiting multiple objects is a lot more complicated in terms of the data structure. Yeah, sorry guys, the stream is going to suffer for another 80-odd%. This probably won't come through in a dying stream, but I'll try and answer the question anyway. So the voice chat we definitely want to do properly. We want proximity chat on the bridge, and if two people are chatting in a room and the door's closed, then at most it should be muffled chat behind the door. So we definitely want to do those things. But at the same time, we do want global broadcast chat on the ship as well. So we need to do it properly. And sample retrieval from planets is something which is coming reasonably soon, because we've had to sort of draw up a priority list of what we're doing and in what order based on development need. So obviously VR is next, because that's something that was covered in Kickstarter. We promised that we'd be working on VR, so we want to get a test build out just to kind of tick that box and say, right, yes, here is a VR build, we are working on it, have a play. But there are like a plethora of things which need to be done for the game, and you can't do it all at once, so you need to kind of pick what order you do things in. So we're starting off with the ability to command an NPC on the bridge. That seems like a logical place to start, and then we'll expand outwards from there. Yeah, God knows if anyone can hear me or not, so I'm just typing it instead. So hopefully I'm back. Welcome back, everyone. So there we go. Pre-release test build is now live. So on the demo, you need to go to the betas tab and select pre-release bug testing, and that will give you access to this build. Are we live? Brilliant. So I'm speaking in the future to all you people in the past. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Am I live? Am I 8 minutes ago? What's going on? Who am I? Still not seeing any usage on that yet. Don't know how often that updates, actually. To be fair, YouTube is still complaining. I can see the concurrent viewers slowly creeping back up. Oh, cat reveal. Hello. Oh. Well, I think on that happy note, as the build is out and everyone is slowly catching up, that's a good point to end the stream. We are 4 hours in. Not that any of you can hear me saying this, of course, although you might hear me in 6 minutes.